Golgotha, just outside of Jerusalem, is the place where this happens. Matthew and Mark confirm it in their Gospels. In Aramaic, Golgotha means the place of the skull. Scholars are uncertain as to whether it was the name because the hill was shaped like a skull or because it was known for the number of executions that occurred there. In Western culture, it is more prevalently known as Calvary. Here we have a place with 3 different names, encompassing 3 different erected crosses, highlighting 3 very different people. This place with 3 names was used for the common purpose of facilitating the most brutal, horrific death one could have. This was the Colosseum of crucifixions, the main stage for the excruciating display of inhumane cruelty. 3 names for a place known for its legacy of humiliation, torture, and death. On this hill, we look up to see 3 crosses, painfully displaying the last moments of 3 lives. 2 of them described as criminals alongside the one we have come to see, Jesus the Christ. Placed in the company of Jesus, it is easy to believe that these 3 men were different from each other, to envision these thieves as undesirables. Historic accounts tell us that crucifixions were typically used to execute slaves, disgraced soldiers, Christians, and foreigners. I suppose today's equivalent would be Black and Asians, the LGBTQA communities, Muslims, and illegal immigrants. Some might even refer to them as super predators, deplorables, insurrectionists, and terrorists. In this moment, both the criminals and Christ are united in their status on the cross. In this moment, all 3 of them are facing a lonely, isolated death, filled with agonizing physical and emotional pain, revealing their true character to the end. On one side of Jesus, you have a man disparaging Jesus, an expression of entitled resentment. I can only imagine that he is slinging insults with intense scorn, cursing and yelling in every effort to bully Jesus into saving him. This man is angry at the very thought of being held accountable for his actions, for losing the privilege of seizing his every pine. He sees Jesus as an opportunity to escape judgment, if only he can manipulate Jesus into saving himself. Like the devil in the wilderness, this thief attempts to appeal to the self-preservation instinct many people have, to the urge that comes with ego when a person needs to prove themselves when challenged. To no avail, this angry bully is only stopped when the other thief breaks his silence, when the quiet bystander speaks out in outrage. Dying on the cross on the other side of Jesus is the other thief. Only this man is filled with empathy and regret, desiring to be remembered in a better light than how he lived. He recognizes that harm has been caused by his actions and accepts responsibility for it. An expression of penitence. He defends Jesus, preserving the truth of his innocence as he embraces the legitimacy of his own guilt. He bears his soul when he says to Jesus, "Remember me when you come into your kingdom." In this repentant thief's darkest, barren moment, he looks to the future and hopes for one in paradise with Jesus. Jesus could have condemned them. After all, They were found guilty of their crimes. As the king of the Jews, he could have degraded them and spent his last thoughts on something perceived as more worthy. Instead, in his final hours, Jesus examples for us one last time his expression of care as a loving, unselfish listener, a comforting consoler, and an adamant advocate for all. For the repentant thief, he does not postpone, prolong, or procrastinate in his promise of paradise. He responds with the necessary urgency, saying, "Today you will join me in paradise." From today on, I would imagine Jesus shared that Jesus would stay by our side, and that today and every day, God is with us. This man who walked among the poor, miraculously healed the sick, and ate with sinners, spent some of his last words comforting a criminal. 3 crosses, 3 men, and 3 expressions of significance. I can't help but wonder, when we lay on the cross that each of us bear, what expressions of significance will we share? This final conversation on the cross gives light to a few considerations. First, the criminal and Christ lived very different lives, only to reach the same terrible end. This reminds us that even in our differences, we are all fallible as humans. Systemic discrimination based on race and economic class continues to impede our progress in uniting our humanity. While this plague of a pandemic has exacerbated our horrific systemic inequities and how they play out in the outcomes of access to healthcare, economic, food, and housing security, no one is untouched by its negative impact on our society. No one. Second, the thief that derided Jesus illustrates how someone in the company of Jesus can fail to represent godly values. As the church, we must examine ourselves and the role we play in perpetuating circles of harm. What conversations are we having with Jesus? But most importantly, we see that it is never too late to receive God's grace. The repentant thief was incapable of undoing his deeds of the past, but through his repentance and actions with Jesus, he secured an eternal home in paradise. God's presence is what brings a harmony needed to complete us. Embracing the love of God is paradise. Learning to love one another is paradise. Forgiving each other and ourselves is paradise. Let us join Jesus in paradise today.